kids, welcome back in. Thanks for listening. If you're not one of my kids, thank you for listening. It really does mean a lot to us. I feel like we've got a really cool and fun episode today. Again, as I've mentioned before, I graduated from Tennessee Tech with my bachelor's. Jason Crockett, who is the co-host on this show, he also graduated from Tennessee Tech, and we're lucky to have such a great university here in our area. I live in Sparta. Tech is in Cookeville, which is basically just 15, 20 minutes up the road. So we're just really lucky to have Tech as a part of this community, what we would call here in this area the Upper Cumberland. But one thing I really am thankful for with Tennessee Tech is the approachability of the professors. Russ Witcher has joined me, and we talked about his nonfiction novella, the retelling of the train robbery that happened in Kentucky. And now we're going to sit down and talk to Dr. Troy Smith, who has written a plethora of books. He's written so many books. It's so impressive. I don't know how he has the time to write so many, but I'm really impressed. But Jason and I picked up a copy of Good Rebel Soil, which was written by Dr. Smith. And one of the reasons we picked that up, again, is we live in Sparta, and there's a tall legend from the Civil War era named Champ Ferguson, who was a Confederate guerrilla. And if you are from the area, from Sparta, you've probably heard about him as you've grown up. Just this tall tale, this figure, this larger than life type thing, this legend that gets passed down throughout generations. And Troy Smith took these legends and fictionalized them, and that's something that he's going to talk about in this podcast. But Troy Smith is a great guy. I really enjoyed talking to him. He's funny, he's smart, he's sharp. He is the man, and we really had a good day talking to Troy Smith, and I just really appreciate, again, just the people at Tech, how they're willing to talk to us, take their time out of their day. You know it's busy. Take the time out of their day and talk to us about their writing, their process, their thinking, their thoughts, just all sorts of things. So just really thankful for that. So again, really fun episode coming up. I won't keep you waiting any longer. Here is Dr. Troy D. Smith, his book, Good Rebel Soil. We are here with Dr. Troy Smith. Thank you for joining us, by the way.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is awesome. Would you care to tell us in your words what Good Rebel Soil is about?
It is a fictionalized, dramatized account of the life and career of Champ Ferguson, the notorious Confederate guerrilla from the Upper Cumberland. It is not a history book in that I took a lot of the legend stuff and incorporated it. I've written a lot of other stuff about Champ Ferguson that is, non-fictional. And in those, I tell the real story. But here, I was trying to tell the compelling story.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool. Why did you feel like, I guess, Champ's story needed to be told?
It is such a compelling story. Mm-hmm. And it is a story that at one time was actually well known outside this region during his lifetime. And it's kind of been forgotten except for around here. But around here, when I was growing up, I heard about it all the time from my uncles and grandparents and stuff. It really is a very compelling story.
Yeah, he's a very complex character. Crockett and I have talked about that a lot, is how... especially in the book, his motivations and things like that. He's very complex, it seems like.
Yeah, and you know what I was trying to do? Because even today, if you talk to people in White County that are from White County, which is a very pro-Confederate, about Champ Ferguson, he is kind of lionized. If you've been to his gravesite, you saw the marker there that talks about how great he is. If you go to his hometown of Albany, Kentucky, they have a marker about what a terrorist he was. The farther east you go, even today, the less people like him because it was a more pro-Union area. And so I found that fascinating, that where you are situated geographically affected the politics, and that affects how history is remembered and how historical figures are remembered. And I really wanted to delve into that a little bit. And what I was really trying to do is, at the same time, I was looking at this like a Greek tragedy. Okay, so, or just any kind of like a Shakespearean tragedy where you have a character that has some attractive qualities, but has this one fatal flaw that drives them on to their ultimate destruction, and you watch that happen. And so I felt like this was a perfect opportunity to align those two kinds of things. I even had his friend Rains Philpott, who was a historical figure, but nothing like what I wrote him. I had him as basically the chorus.
Yeah.
Because he's there playing Jiminy Cricket, being the conscience and saying, gee, do you really think we should do this? We're going to go to hell,
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was something that I thought about for a long time, did a lot of research, spent a lot of time in the state archives going through court records, the original court records, and the newspaper accounts and stuff.
So you said you'd written other things about Champ Ferguson. I know Jason said he had read some articles that you've written. Have you written like a nonfiction book? Or and if not, why did you not, I guess, go that route with all the research that you did?
Well, what wound up happening is that at the same time the novel came out, I had the cover article in Civil War Times about Champ Ferguson. That one actually, ironically, is the thing that I've written that has been cited the most in scholarly works. And then later I wrote a chapter in a book called People of the Upper Cumberland by Doctors Birdwell and Dickinson were the editors. And I wrote the chapter about Champ Ferguson, in which I delved a little bit into the legend and how it's bled into popular culture. But to be honest, after I had written this novel, and I wrote it in first person. Many of my novels I write first person and I sort of become the character in a way. I didn't want to stay that character. Because he was a rough fella, and I moved on to other things, but I've continually revisited him down through the years.
Yeah. Well, that was something I had wondered about when I was reading it, because I do read your articles in Sparta Live, and I appreciate those, by the way. And I just wondered, like, how hard was it to have to step into his mind and pretend that you were him? Because I would imagine when you're writing something from first person, especially something historically accurate, you have to slip into that person to an extent. And so how difficult was that?
Well, my family told me I was terrible to live with for the whole time it took me 2 years.
You were trying to kill some bluebellies.
I was cranky as heck about everything. And it had never bothered me that everyone on our road were Yankees before. But all of a sudden, anything they did, I was just like, those dadgum Yankees, And I was just really angry. And so I think that was slipping in. But it's kind of good, to be able to get that much into a character. There's a writer named Oakley Hall.
Oh, yeah.
Who wrote Warlock.
Yes, I love Warlock.
Yes, nominated for a Pulitzer Prize. He said that nonfiction is the search for facts and fiction is the search for truth. I do both, but I feel like in some ways with fiction, you can get closer to the truth of the feel of things,
Yeah.
And so by really just immersing myself in that character, and I'll be honest with you, a lot of people have told me that they really like the dialogue, that it is, regionally accurate. For a lot of this stuff, I just imagined my uncles and cousins from Cane Holler and what they would say and what they would do, and just went with that. But yeah, it was a little hard to pull out of after I'd been, in that persona for a while. It was a kind of a scary place.
Yeah. What do you do when you get finished writing a book and you've been with a character like that you have to, I mean, how do you, I guess, cleanse yourself of that?
That is a good way to put it. You almost have to purify yourself. There's a downtime. There's an anticlimactic feeling to having finished. I mean, it's a positive feeling that you've got this story now and it's complete. But it is a little bit of an empty feeling as well. So what I do is I move on to the next one. Yeah. So I've got all these characters lurking around in my head still, though.
That's awesome. Have you read Warlock?
Yes.
Do you love it? I love it.
I love it, yes.
He does it.
I didn't love it so much. I got stuck after book 1, and I was just like, maybe I was just in the wrong place at the wrong time when I was reading it.
That could happen.
Because he's talked me through it, and I thought, I need to give it a fair shake. I need to reread it.
I love all the subtext that's in there. It was the movie version as well.
The movie's pretty good, yeah.
Yeah. The relationship between Henry Fonda and Anthony Quinn's characters is not typical for 1950s stuff. Yeah. It's really, really deep.
Yeah.
If you like that, there's another book with a similar theme called Journal of the Gun Years by Richard Matheson.
Oh, okay.
Richard Matheson, one of the all-time great horror writers, pretty darn good Western writer as well.
Crockett loves horror.
Yeah, I didn't know he wrote Western material too.
Well, he branched out. This was he actually wrote 2 or 3 more after that. It was later in his career. But he's such a great writer.
Yeah,
it really jumped out. And unlike Warlock, it's not 5,000 pages long. It's a typical mass market paperback, a couple of hundred pages.
Right.
Do you have a favorite Western novel?
Oh, my favorite novel, period, is Lonesome Dove.
Oh, okay.
It is epic, and it's one of those things that when I'm feeling sort of like stuck, I can just open it up and start reading it any place and be carried along by the prose as well as by the characters. And if there's, I think all writers have probably a combination of people who influence them. But he was a big influence on my writing style, I believe. One of the things I like a lot about McMurtry, and by the way, his son is as good a storyteller as he is, except in song, is that in this particular book, everybody's yearning for something they can't have, which is universal. That resonates with all of us, and it just elevates it to this almost poetic level, even though it's also at the same time a good story.
Yeah.
So, that's my favorite.
Yeah. I feel like I've gotten Crockett onto the Western novel lately.
Oh, yeah.
We've read a few together now.
Numerous this year.
What's the last one? Butcher's Crossing is the last one we read. Yeah. I really loved that book.
I liked Butcher's Crossing better than I liked the first part of Warlock. But again, maybe I need to give it a fair shake.
What about Glendon Swarthout?
I know nothing about that one.
He wrote The Shootist.
I've read The Shootist. I've got that on my shelf. Yeah.
Okay.
Shootist is pretty good.
Probably my second favorite Western novel, The Homesman. It's made into a movie about 10 years ago with Tommy Lee Jones and Hilary Swank. It's about the Hilary Swank's character in the movie. She's this lady that is trying to transport a bunch of women who have had psychotic breaks out on the prairie to a madhouse. But they have to go through Indian territory. And she hires this drunk, basically, as security and as her driver. Yeah. And that's their odyssey, which just that setup
that's cool.
is very promising. It's really well done.
Yeah. There's just another one to read.
You brought up like influences. We were talking in the car today that reading fictionalized historical accounts like this reminds me of Shakespeare having to dig back in through histories for his plays. And I'm wondering, in my first read through of the novel, that Champ seems so disagreeable. I found so many times where I just thought, why are we idolizing this person? Why are we idolizing? And at one point, it struck me that you are writing in first person, Was there ever an intention for this to be an unreliable narrator who is telling his version of his story to people? Did that ever cross your mind?
Absolutely. When I took Mark Creeder's Intro to Theater,
Classic.
I was working on this. Actually, when I started college, I was 32, and I'd already had my first book published and had a lot of magazine things published. I was working on this book, and I was a little worried about my momentum on it now that I'm taking classes. And my advisor, Dr. Slotkin,
Yes.
what we decided to do was treat this novel like another class I have. And so I would meet with him every 2 weeks to show him the progress, and I would carve out the same amount of time I would for any of my classes. And I got the manuscript done. But for Creeder's class, we had to do a monologue, and so I chose the opening few pages of this book, right where he's saying, "Yeah, I killed a lot of people. I'd do it again." Self-defense in advance, basically. And hopefully that's setting you up.
Right.
That this guy here, he's from the outset, he's sentenced to hang for murder. And he's not being that apologetic about it. So you should, I hope, be able to figure out that you're getting his perspective, not necessarily the perspective.
Right. There's so many times that we have characters who, like Walter White or Tony Soprano, are not good guys, and yet we find ourselves not necessarily rooting for them to get away with it, but we find ourselves liking parts about them. What would you say is a redeemable quality about your Champ Ferguson, if not the Champ Ferguson?
I think a redeeming quality of the Champ Ferguson is he could be a remarkably funny guy. He seemed like he'd be fun to hang out with as long as you were on his good side. I mean, that stuff where he's at his trial, and this reporter comes looking for Champ Ferguson, and he points out the prosecuting attorney. He says, "That's him. Can't you tell how wicked he is just by looking at him?" It seemed like he'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
My Champ Ferguson, his commitment to his family, and that is kind of how I got at this, because I had a kid the same age as his kid, and I was just imagining a lot of that, and I'm not so sure how much of that was true to life. I imagine most parents, though, feel that way, and I feel like that sort of humanized him quite a bit. Those scenes, particularly with his daughter.
Yes.
Maybe not so much with his wife, who was a little bit, questionable in character, I think, herself.
That's what we were talking about in the car today, is that if you're looking for like an internal conflict of what it is that's really driving him, so much more often I got that when he's watching his daughter fish or he's having his interactions with his daughter. And yet he does fight for his wife. He does feel compelled to get revenge for what happened to her. But I never felt like she was the driving impetus for any of these choices. He could say, well, it was because they said they would prosecute me if I didn't join the Confederacy. But often it's when he thinks back to his daughter that I felt like, oh, okay, that's where the guy really had his drive.
I felt like his wife was a Lady Macbeth type.
Oh, yeah.
She was driving him, but not in that sense.
Right.
She was pushing him
Yes.
to do these things.
What's the part where Lady Macbeth says, when you dare do this, then you're a man?
Yeah.
Like if you actually hunt the rest of them down, then you're a real man. Chapter 14 stuck out to me because it begins with 3 words: Fentress County, Tennessee, period.
Well, there you go.
And I've made the mistake 2 times now of opening up you to a conversation that I felt like we were just burning good content. And today it started with Fentress County, Tennessee, and you just kind of leaned back and smiled real big. Haston is from Sparta. I'm from Fentress County. So we have Champ, we have Tinker Dave, we have Gray, we have Blue.
My daddy's people, like I said earlier, but I think before we started recording, is from Overton County. But my great-grandmother was a Hull.
Okay.
A cousin to Cordell Hull.
Yeah.
And one of her brothers rode with Tinker Dave Beatty.
Oh, cool.
Wow. So you're related to Halls from Fentress County.
Yeah.
I also am related to Halls from Fentress County. So,
probably back there.
I mean, living in this area, you can throw a stone and you're probably related, right, to somebody.
I had, 5 or 6 ancestors fighting in that war on the opposite sides. So I'm glad they didn't shoot each other.
Right.
That would have been bad for me.
One question that I had was that Tinker Dave Beatty does show up in your book several times. And Champ Ferguson, Tinker Dave Beatty, something I always heard about coming up through York Institute, through my history classes. Both men were guerrilla fighters. Both of them extreme adjutants of each other. And I feel like Champ even recognizes that I'm a great shot, and I've hit every man I ever shot at except Tinker Dave Beatty. Like even though we're great enemies, there was a little bit of respect there, right?
Yeah, and that's historical. Because in the testimony of Tinker Dave Beatty, he said so, that he had a lot of respect for Champ Ferguson. It's like they were on opposite sides, but they were very similar.
You wrote in an article that Tinker Dave Beatty happens to come down on the winner's side of victory, but they're both basically doing the same thing. And if history had gone differently, things might have turned out differently, because Champ is one of only several people who were prosecuted as a guerrilla after the Civil War, right? And he may have surrendered to federal troops, but they were told not to accept surrender from him, right? So why? Well, let me say this. Have you ever considered writing Tinker Dave Beatty's story?
Well, there's not as much in the record on him except where he interacts with Champ.
Right.
That would make that a little bit difficult. It is very true, though, that who wins does wind up, it seems, playing a big role in how people are perceived. Also, I think that Champ Ferguson learned the hard way that when you threaten to go to Nashville and cut the governor's throat, and then that governor becomes president of the United States, that might not be good.
Why do you think that is, that we don't have so much about Tinker Dave Beatty? Is it because I honestly don't know the answer to that question.
Well, you grew up in Fentress County. Do you think that there's a lot of Confederate apologism, pro-Confederate feeling in Fentress County?
No.
There's not?
No.
Because I was going to say, well, maybe that's part of what it is. I had, when my article in Civil War Times came out about Champ Ferguson, I got a call from his niece, his brother's daughter. She was like 90-something years old. And very proud of Champ Ferguson's Confederate record.
Okay.
But her father was Union.
Right.
So I'm not sure if that might have something to do with it.
I have to change my answer. I was thinking in the time of Tinker Dave Beatty that no, they would have not had a lot of Confederate sympathy. Nowadays, I feel like that is a flipped coin.
Yes, that was my point. That was the point I was getting at, is that with the whole lost cause narrative that became popularized after the war was over, it's increasingly true. I think even weirdly enough, more so year by year, people in East Tennessee think they have a Confederate heritage.
And they don't.
And they don't.
Right.
Yeah.
I have family in West Virginia, which West Virginia only exists because they didn't want to go with the Confederacy. And yet so many of my family in West Virginia feel the same way, that we're the South, that they still today would have their own Confederate flags. Why do we have this flip in narrative?
Part of it, I think, is the reaction to Reconstruction and this feeling of being oppressed generally, so that the original sympathies of one's region or family sort of faded into the background. In fact, I'm going to give a pitch for my friend Ian Bennington, whom I went to grad school with. He makes a strong argument that there was no such thing as Confederate nationalism until after the war. During the war, the Confederacy died by states' rights because none of the states would cooperate. Right. But then this sense of unified national identity came about after the war. during Reconstruction.
That makes sense.
Crockett's heard me tell this joke too many times, but I've told him I feel like people from Fentress County are like the Israelites. They've spread out. They're all over the place. But that's okay. It brought him to us. So,
that's right.
Yeah. No, I told Crockett today when we were driving around that I really did enjoy the parts where Champ was interacting with his daughter. And, hearing you talk about that, you could tell that a dad of a daughter had written that. I've got two of my own. And I think that's why I gravitated to those a lot, is because I thought I can really relate to this. So I really enjoyed those parts.
One scene in particular where he puts his forehead to hers was, not just something I came up with. It's something that I had noticed, right? I would look into my child's eyes as much as they grow, now like 34 years old, but their eyes are always the same.
Yeah.
You just look into their eyes and it's the same person as when they were a baby.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, that was one of the parts where I read that. I thought, I was thinking, I wonder if Dr. Smith did that with his child, because I thought that's like such a specific thing, but it is true. I mean, I look in my oldest and I can still see her when she was 3. She's 7 right now, but I can still see her when she was 2 and 3. So I really like that part. So I do have a question. It's kind of maybe going in a different direction, but you were talking about how there were a lot of rebel sympathizers in White County, but I live in Blue Springs. So, and I want to talk about that in a little bit.
Town?
Yes. And so I was wondering, like, what's the history behind Yankeetown? Because I've always been told, Yankee headquarters was here. So I always assumed, we had like a strong Yankee representation. And I know that we're on that line of East and Middle Tennessee, and I know a lot of East Tennessee was pro-Union. So I guess I'm not very familiar with the true history behind Yankeetown.
I think it was already called Yankeetown before that from people who had moved in. But I can tell you that I may be wrong there, but I can tell you this. I think I'm remembering this correctly. There were, I believe, it was either 20 or 10 companies raised in White County, and one of them was a Union company. That's 80 to 100 men that were attached to the 5th U.S. Cavalry, commanded by William Brickley Stokes from DeKalb County. So there were local White Countyans fighting for the Union Army, at least 80 of them.
Okay.
So that's significant. Plus, when you add in all the runaway slaves that joined in and became part of the 14th U.S. Colored Infantry that came from Sparta.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow, okay. So the colored infantry came from Sparta.
Yes, and that is something that was totally lost to popular memory. I came across that information when I was researching this book.
That's really cool.
Actually. So there's this thing called the Record of the War of the Rebellion. You familiar with that?
I'm not.
So in the 1880s, they bound up in this collection of like 30 huge big books every written command, order, and report from the Civil War from both sides.
Wow.
And now it's digitized, online, and searchable from Ohio State University. But when I was doing this, I was using the copy here at Tennessee Tech at the library, going through the index, looking for every reference to Champ Ferguson or to Sparta, and then looking it up. So I came across this reference saying, and I think this was maybe in March or April of 1864, Colonel William Brickley Stokes from DeKalb County, who is the person that was in charge of the occupation of Sparta, made this report. Well, we almost got Champ Ferguson, but he got away again. And then, next sentence, the 14th United States Colored Infantry is in town operating out of our headquarters, which was what's now the First United Methodist Church, and are recruiting heavily. And I was like, I never heard anything about that. And so I asked my professors here, and they'd never heard about it. So I started digging, and I got a lot of information about that. Turns out that what happened, 120 men were recruited.
Wow.
Probably some from surrounding counties that came in. From this, I learned, which had not been in any of the local history books, White County had the largest free black population of any county between Nashville and Knoxville.
Wow.
So that's why they came specifically to White County. And then that regiment took on General George Dibbrell's 8th Cavalry twice and beat them.
Oh.
And so people stopped talking about it. And then those soldiers didn't come back home. They got their families and moved out west, most of them. I found most of them in the census in Kansas and Oklahoma after that. So it got forgotten about. So, yeah, there was that amount of Union support as well that people forget about. There was some talk about getting some kind of memorial for those black soldiers.
That would be cool to do, yeah.
I'm not sure where that is right now. But for a while, there was on a trajectory to get that done.
That would be, I mean, I think it's needed.
Yeah. So there was a guy, 16 years old, chose as his last name Grant. Born a slave in Sparta, J.W. Grant, who went to Fisk University later, became an educator and a lawyer, and eventually was dean of the law school at Central Tennessee College, which is a historically black college in Nashville, and was big friends with, how did this guy's name fly out of my head? You got W.E. Du Bois, and you've got Up From Slavery, Washington. You know what I'm talking about. His name flew out of my head. Anyway.
I'll be the fact checker.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to kick myself because I talk about this guy constantly. I talk about him constantly.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah, so there's fascinating layers to our Civil War history that people are unaware of. People think they know the story, but they don't necessarily know the story.
Yeah.
Booker T. Washington.
Thank you very much.
Well, I took Jason today to George Dibrell's grave, and we drove by his house in town. So,
First United Methodist Church. I started going there when I moved back to Sparta, and I was just curious about the history of the church. Apparently, that church was established like in 1830, and one of the circuit riders, Braxton Hunter, was the father of the guy that formed, Hunter's funeral.
Oh, okay.
And Braxton Hunter was an abolitionist Methodist circuit rider who later was the agent for the Freedmen's Bureau.
Okay.
But anyway, so I'm asking about history about the church, and I was told the story. Some of the older ladies in the church still mad about it. The dadgum Yankees made this church their headquarters when they declared martial law in Sparta. And they tore out the flooring in the sanctuary and turned it into a stable.
Oh, wow.
I was like, oh, wow. And I went and found the order. And it was from Stokes. And then I put two and two together. When you walk in the church and you look at the stained glass window from the original building, you know what it says on it? George G. Dibrell. He donated. It was his church.
Oh, wow.
That's why they picked that church to turn into a
That
stable.
is a cool story. That's cool. So the Dibrell part where they retreated back to Wildcat Creek, is that historically? Okay.
The Wildcat Creek was an actual battle/skirmish.
Okay, I took Crockett kind of back through there because I live, if you're familiar with where the Cars land is, they surround me, and the Blue Spring runs on my land. And I told Crockett, I took him back to my house today, and I said, they had to have come through here, and I had no clue that had even happened.
It took place right there, I think, on the White County, Putnam County border.
Oh, okay.
Right around it.
Yeah. That's really cool. I had no clue. And I mean, I told him my wife had a dream about a man that lived back there. We think, I don't know. His name was Nathaniel, and he had a new hunting knife. So
I told Haston he's going to have a midnight experience where he wakes up and a Union ghost is going to be looking through his window.
Yeah, that was really cool, though.
So I got to tell you this story. My stepdaughter, Hannah, I still get some royalties from this book. It's sold very well compared to my other stuff. So, like every month I'll get like $20 or $30, And so one day after church on Sunday, we were going to go out to eat because I'd gotten my $30. And Hannah said, just imagine if Champ Ferguson hadn't shot that lady at the Cherry Creek Church, we wouldn't be eating Mexican right now.
Well, I took him back there too. I had like a little field trip for him. I took him back to Cherry Creek Baptist today. So, is that the same building that was there?
I don't think so.
Okay, we were trying to figure that out earlier today. What about the Jim Ferguson stuff? Did that really happen? Or
No.
Okay.
No, that's the legend that was really reinforced a lot by Thurman Sensing, who wrote the 1940 biography. Absolutely no evidence to any of that whatsoever.
Okay.
But it's a compelling part of the story. So I'll make a photocopy for you guys and send you that chapter from people of the Upper Cumberland.
Cool.
Because I got this idea from Brian McKnight, who basically pointed out, you ever see the movie The Outlaw Josie Wales?
Mm-hmm.
Based on the novel Gone to Texas by the Forrest, something or other Forrest. Turns out his real name was Asa Forrest, and he was George Wallace's speechwriter, real big in the Ku Klux Klan. So racist and radical, George Wallace fired him. And he was from northern Alabama, near the Tennessee border, and would have heard stories about Champ Ferguson. Then he writes this story about Josie Wales, which is fictional, but if you read the novel, it takes place in Missouri. He had just moved to Missouri from Tennessee, where his Scottish clan heritage had led him into a bunch of feuds that had caused him to have to leave. So Josie Wales was probably a mixture of the historical figures of Champ Ferguson and Bloody Bill Anderson, the Missouri guerrilla.
Yeah. How about that?
That's pretty cool.
Anyhow, this story started circulating during the war when Ferguson was still alive. A couple of different stories. There was that one, and then the story about his little 5-year-old boy waving the Confederate flag, and the Union soldiers passing by shot and killed him, which the only problem with that is he never had a little boy. He had one that had died as an infant like 10 years earlier, so that never happened. Basically, these efforts to try to come up with some compelling story as to what would motivate him to be so violent so he could be heroized, right? Because otherwise, he's just a mean guy. Right? And these stories stuck. And even as time, because during his trial, there were reporters from all over the country there that were just writing in detail about it. The whole country knew about it and knew about these stories, which he kind of winked and nodded at. You know, because it kind of helped his legend along. But then afterward, you started seeing in frontier literature in the 1880s and 90s, around the time The Virginian was coming out and being real popular, you started seeing this trope of the reluctant Confederate who had not planned to get involved until his family was attacked, ravished and or killed, and his house burned down. And I took that and traced it down through literature and movies. You see it over and over and over. Hell on Wheels.
Yeah.
Even when they made the John Carter movie, Disney, which was, supposed to have Edgar Rice Burroughs, a Virginian former Confederate officer, but they added to it, his family was killed and his house was burned down, because that's become such an accepted part, right, of the legend. And so the whole thing with his brother being, that's drama, right? Yeah. His brother's the one that dishonored his family. The whole thing about his family dishonor probably never happened.
Okay.
And Lieutenant Elza Smith was not a synonym for his brother, Jeff.
I was wondering about that.
But this is a case where I went with the legend because it's compelling. It makes for a good story.
Yeah.
In fact, I like to use this as an example. You guys have seen Tombstone, right? That same year, Wyatt Earp with Kevin Costner came out.
Yes.
Same topic, actually. It was some people that were working on Tombstone that didn't like how they were doing it, so they made their own. But Wyatt Earp, have you seen both of them? Wyatt Earp is much more historically accurate. It kind of sucks as a movie because it's so boring, because they got so much detail in it. Whereas in Tombstone, they condensed several historical figures down into one or two people, and they amplified some of the suggested dramatic tension and made a better story. And so with this, I wasn't trying to convey the complete historical aspect, though I was trying to get at the feel of what it would have been like but I was trying to get to that compelling story.
Yeah.
How many people do you think, though, because I've kind of stumbled upon like a series where all these Civil War novels have come up, and I really never studied it too much. I mean, it's in our area, so I enjoy history, so I guess studied it in that sense. But the novels and things that I've been reading, I'm thinking about, I just finished reading John Ely's A Time of Drums. I don't know if you've ever read that or not, but kind of a similar thing where the protagonist is from North Carolina, and he's kind of sympathized with the Confederacy, and he's sent back to conscript soldiers, and it's made it to seem like these guys were reluctant Confederates, you know, and things like that. So is that like a complete legend, or was that going on as well?
Not that many people were reluctant at the very beginning.
Okay.
People became reluctant as the war dragged on, especially in the South. There was a lot of desertion. In fact, I found the desertion papers of my great-great-grandfather when I was doing some research. Apparently, he joined the Confederate infantry in Hillham, and about halfway through the war, this is my uncle Noah Sidney Smith, about halfway through the war, requested a transfer to the cavalry. And the transfer was granted. Well, the cavalry didn't know he was coming. So he just went home. And the infantry didn't miss him because he's supposed to be in the cavalry, right? And so they finally figured it out. By that time, the war was almost over. But the fact is that as the war dragged on, and soldiers on both sides were looking at it as, you know, the famous expression, rich man's war, poor man's fight, and they'd been away from home for a long time. There was nobody there getting the crops in, you know. Yeah. Families were going hungry. So there was a lot of desertion. But early on, I think there was a lot of excitement.
Yeah.
I have another Fentress County question.
Go for it.
Fentress County, Tennessee.
Before I ask this question, you and Dr. Dickinson and others had come to Fentress County. Can you tell me that story again?
Oh, yes. Okay. So, 2011, the 150th anniversary of the beginning of the war, my friend Brian McKnight had just released his biography of Champ Ferguson, which I highly recommend, Confederate Outlaw. And so he was on campus giving a talk about that. And so Dr. Calvin Dickinson and Dr. Larry Whitaker, Dr. Michael Birdwell, Brian McKnight, myself, Randy Williams, who's now Dr. Randy Williams, we went to Champ Ferguson's gravesite. And then we went to the location of his house, where his house had been located. And then we were going to go over to Fentress County and visit the grave of Tinker Dave Beatty. And I was in the car with Calvin and Bertie. And probably because we were paying no attention and we're just talking, the other group lost us. You know, they weren't there all of a sudden. We weren't entirely sure where we were. And so we drove around Fentress County all day long trying to find the dead Tinker Dave Beatty. But it was a hilarious adventure and a great time because being stuck in the car with those two guys was who have left us now, unfortunately. Yeah. But it was always a great thing. We actually probably once a month or so, the three of us would pile into Bertie's little blue Subaru and just go off exploring. That's fantastic. Around the Upper Cumberland, go to different restaurants in different towns and stuff. I miss them.
Yes.
And Dr. Whitaker recently left us as well.
Yeah. As a Fentress Countyan, and you talking about the now that we're looking back at the reluctant Confederate, and that we tend to rewrite or give sympathy to some of these aspects. We were reminded of a notorious Fentress Countyan, Billy Dean Anderson. Mm-hmm. Are you familiar with him? And Billy Dean Anderson, have you ever read any of the stuff about him? There was a book.
Criminal Life.
A Criminal Life.
I watched a documentary about him not long ago.
Okay, fantastic.
We can't find that.
We're on the hunt for this documentary.
Okay.
Apparently, they've gone around at several different places in Salina, Byrdstown, and set up a stand with some of his artwork, some of his artifacts, and then they'll show part of it. But we haven't seen the documentary yet. We're trying to find it.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of similarities in character. My grandmother, Ruthie Bowles, from Overton County, she passed away about a year before I was born. She had 2 brothers murdered. One, when he was 18, they came out on the front porch and he'd been shot with a shotgun. And it was a dispute over a girl, apparently. And then the other one, when he was older, he had a teenage daughter, and a bunch of rowdy guys came to pick her up, and he wouldn't let her go with them, and they shot him. My point is, it's kind of violent there.
Yeah.
I discovered from Randy Williams, actually, Randy's like, my wife Edie's from Overton County, and she's a genealogist. I bet she could help you learn some stuff. Turns out she was my second cousin. We didn't know it. I learned that my other great-great-grandfather, Jim Bowles, was the constable of Gainsborough during the war, and he died in the closing days of the war. Not in battle, but rather he had confiscated a bunch of moonshine and homemade brandy, and he was trying to auction it off before the Yankees got there. And so he also had just bought a brand new 1860 Navy Colt revolver that he was showing off, passing the gun around. Everybody's drinking, and somebody said something. And so whoever had the gun at the time just emptied the gun into the audience and shot and killed my great-great-grandfather. So I told my wife this story, and she said, so what you're telling me is your family hasn't changed at all, essentially.
I was thinking that you get fellows like this from the Civil War. You get fellows like Billy Dean Anderson from the 70s. And now here we are in 2025. And again and again and again, it's not just one time in American history, but again and again and again, we become so entrenched. We become so polarized. We become so argumentative. And Haston and I, as teachers, were talking in the car today that if in 2025 we had to live through the events of the Civil War, how likely, can you imagine certain students in our class who easily could have been Champ Ferguson?
Or Tinker Dave,
who could have been so problematic, who could have been so argumentative and quick to pick up a gun, and yet, you know what, you kind of like the guy. If we were just hanging out, you kind of like the guy. And Billy Dean Anderson, so many people had good stories to tell of him, and I know when the feds came and asked part of my family about him, and they said, well, this guy's a bad guy. They said, I'm sooner scared of you than I am of him. We find that there are redeeming things about these people, and yet we get back into trouble. What would you want? If we were to teach this to a class of students in 2025 America, what would you hope people, students, whomever, take away from a story like Champ Ferguson's?
I'm going to preface that by saying how much I hate the movie The Patriot.
Oh,
with
yes.
Mel Gibson.
Fair. We all.
Yes, because you know what? He wasn't a patriot. He didn't start fighting till his family was. They're begging him to do something. No, then his family. Then he starts fighting. That's not a patriot. So my point is, I think that it is very dangerous to be caught up in your passions rather than your ideals. If your ideals are sincerely, deeply held, even if they differ from the ideals of the people on the other side, if it's going to get to the point that there is conflict, the only way for that conflict to be justifiable is if you are defending something that is really worth defending. Not just because you're mad at somebody or not because you're just a cranky person. And here's an opportunity to get in there and have fun. Like if you're familiar with Pomp Kersey, Short Mountain Boys, you're familiar with him? He was a Confederate guerrilla over in DeKalb and Cannon counties. He led a group of teenaged Confederate deserters who didn't like being ordered around. So they just made their own little mob and they victimized everybody. And then the people of Smithville shot them down one night when they rode into town. The point there being that they were using that as cover, basically just to do what they wanted to do. So be very careful and think very carefully about what's going to happen. In fact, around the time this book came out, I was a student here at Tennessee Tech. I was in my 30s. and the invasion, the attack on Iraq was about to happen, 2003. I was in a military history class, one of the only non-ROTC people in the class, and a lot of these young men were very excited and very gung-ho. I'd never been in the military, but I wrote a short story about a Native American Vietnam veteran coming back and the troubles, and I interviewed about 24 combat veterans for that, just to get, because I knew I could never get it right, but I wanted to get it as less wrong as I could. And so what I took out of that and what I tried to convey to my classmates was, if you're going to serve, you are volunteering to potentially risk life and limb. But no one stops and thinks about the risks that you are taking to your own soul and mental well-being because of the things that you will have to see and have to participate in, that you are willingly signing up to be wounded that way. It has to be for a good reason. Right. It can't just be because you think it's fun, because it's not going to be fun.
Right. You cite Champ Ferguson's, what seems to me like a final declaration that I'm going to die a rebel, out and out, and just send me back to White County on good rebel soil.
Yes.
And you may say other people have definitive versions, but I think you've got the best title.
Well, that's a great quote. That's a direct quote from Champ Ferguson.
Yeah. When you write, I don't want to steal a question from you.
Go for it.
When you write, how much of your writing process is planning out versus I'm just going to get into it and write?
That is two very different approaches, and they both can work depending on who you are. I outline a lot, and if I'm doing something historical like this or some of the other historical fiction things I've done, I just get really deep into the details, and then the story starts to unfold itself. But generally speaking, even if it was something that wasn't based on a historical figure, I tend to at least have a vague chapter-by-chapter outline of what's going to happen. And actually what I do is I envision the last scene. The last scene, because that last scene is going to sum up what I've been trying to say. I envision that, and then I work toward it. And that works for me.
That's a brilliant idea.
How much do you outline per chapter? Do you just do like certain scenes that pop in your head, or do you try to make as much detail and then come back through and write those in order, or do you start from, I guess, maybe I've got an idea of what I want to happen in this scene, but it's not the beginning of my story. Do you know what I'm saying? Do you start there? How do you go about that?
Again, it depends on how historical the fiction is going to be.
Yeah.
If like for Champ Ferguson, I outlined extensively because I knew there's these various events, and then I have to think about how am I going to portray those events and make them fit my theme. If it were something I were making up whole cloth, it would be a little less so. I might just have like the main thing that I want to happen in this chapter and 3 or 4 basic, and then just sort of go from there and let the characters sort of take over. If I'm writing a mystery/crime novel, I will, after I'm finished, I write toward that final scene, then I'll go back and start adding in like red herrings and little clues and stuff, so that my goal is you get to the end of the story, you find out who done it. You couldn't figure it out, hopefully. But when you find out who it was, you go, oh, of course. Because then you remember all those things that were mentioned that you didn't really internalize that much. So hopefully laying a foundation for that.
Perry Hastings' next novel. That's my alter ego, Perry Hastings. Instead of Perry Mason, it's Perry Hastings. So I'll have to get one of those.
You had told us once before that you have contributed to Louis L'Amour magazine, correct?
Yes.
When you write Western, how much of that was also in your process for this? Were you thinking in the mode of Western? Were you thinking in the mode of human? Like what?
Yeah, I think that this qualifies as a Western. really, even though it's not in the West. I think a lot of Civil War-oriented stuff does. So that mindset, at least. So when I was, that's why someone like Bloody Bill Anderson, because he's actually in Missouri and Kansas, kind of pulls it all together. But I think that, that reluctant Confederate thing has been a trope in Westerns a lot. That was the defining experience for a whole generation or two of people. So someone living in the Old West in the 1870s and 80s is either going to be a veteran of this conflict or their parent was.
Yeah.
You get back to the later 1880s and 1890s, it's maybe moved on a little bit, but it's very much a part of what people, in fact, if you think about it, I'm not sure how up people are on the Wild West, but both historically and in fiction, generally speaking, the peace officers, the lawmen, were former Union people, and the outlaws and bank robbers were former Confederates.
Right.
So is that bucking against the system still? And it didn't hurt that, Jesse and Frank James learned their trade under the auspices of fighting for the Confederacy. But, Wyatt Earp, Wild Bill Hickok, all those guys were Union veterans.
Yeah.
Russ Switcher told me that if it has a horse in it, it's a Western.
That's fair enough. I think that Western is a state of mind.
Yeah, I can see that, yeah.
And actually, one of the things that I just finished teaching Tennessee history, one of the things when I asked at the end, what was your favorite thing you learned? A couple of students were like, I never knew how many connections there were between Tennessee and Texas and the West. There's a lot.
Yeah.
You talked earlier about how I guess maybe the legend of Champ Ferguson had kind of faded to an extent. And I don't know, we talk a lot about at our school, we wish that Tennessee history was more enriching, because we feel like it's just kind of
like an afterthought
class.
Like,
you need to know this kind of, but we've also talked about how so many people are moving into our area now, and I don't know.
That's where a lot of sales of this book come from, actually.
Do you feel like that's part of the problem with, I guess, this legend kind of fading is maybe the state standards are not, what am I trying to say? Are they not slanted more towards Tennessee history, or what
do we have an appreciation of Tennessee history?
Yeah.
That's a good question. That's a really good question. Do we have an appreciation of history?
Yeah.
I think we might.
Yeah.
But do legislators, who want to gear everything toward job training without understanding that if you don't have engaged, informed citizens, it doesn't matter what job they have, they're going to mess things up.
Right.
Let's keep doing the same things over and over again.
Yeah.
But Tennessee, gosh, there's so many exciting things to talk about in Tennessee history. I weave it through my U.S. history course. I have a lot of Tennessee history in there because whatever we're talking about, I will find a connection to Tennessee and highlight how Tennessee fits into that or how that affects Tennessee.
Yeah.
And it's not hard to find those things.
No. When do you teach your next Tennessee history class?
Well, I just taught it, so it'll be 2 years.
Okay.
Most of our upper division classes are on a 2-year rotation.
Okay.
But in the spring, next year, I'll be teaching Appalachia.
Ooh.
I kind of alternate Tennessee and Appalachia. Very closely related, obviously.
Yeah. I'll brag on Crockett. He's been doing Tennessee history bell work in his honors English class. So,
I was asking because I thought, maybe I could take his class and then steal ideas and bring it back to the classroom all the time.
Well, the origin of the Tennessee history bell work was he had students who thought Davy Crockett was a myth.
Oh, literally sitting next to a man named Jason Crockett. You have a lot of great aspects of this book, and I don't know what you think about some of your lines that stand out to you or anything, but there was a part that immediately leaped off the page to me as I thought, that's just good writing, is when you said his body went limp at once, emptying itself of blood and piss and soul. And he and I both were like, yes, like that. What a gritty line.
I remember writing that line. I was in a Waffle House at like 3 o'clock in the morning. Yes.
This is the content we showed up for.
He's on brand.
This was not the night that I got beaten up in the parking lot because I picked a fight with 3 guys. It was a different night.
Maybe it's your favorite line or your favorite element, or maybe it's just a favorite memory you have from the process of writing. But what would you say really stands out to you as your favorite part of the book?
I think that my favorite part of this book is that scene at the very end with Rains Philpott at the cemetery feeling lost. And I'm not sure what that says or what that means, but it just touched me somehow.
I think Rains is my favorite character in the book, to be honest with you. And he reminded me a lot of, in Butcher's Crossing, Crockett and I talked about Schneider, which I know that they're different characters, but Schneider was the voice of reason to Miller, but he was a bad guy, where Rains is like, you want to, I don't know, I wanted to like give him a hug or something. Do you know what I mean? But he was still that voice of reason, and I really enjoyed his character. And one of the scenes that I remember the best of Rains was when Champ and Rains come home, and Champ goes on into the house, and Rains is just sitting out there on the horse with holding Champ's horse, and it was raining on him, you know. But I don't know, I really enjoyed Rains Philpott's character. So
the Rains Philpott the Rains Philpott part that stands out to me is when they were all camping in the woods and it was raining, and he kept wanting to talk to Champ, and Champ is, I just need to be quiet some. And so he's like, well, there's nobody to play checkers with. There's nobody to play checkers with. And he's kicking over to this guy, and he's throwing a knife in the dirt. And you mentioned him being like the Greek chorus or the Jiminy Cricket. And now, knowing that aspect to it, it gives me a new layer to Champ's character in that scene, where it's like your own conscience is trying to talk to you, and you don't want to hear it right now. So I'm just going to turn deaf, and it wanders away to go sit by itself in the rain.
Yeah.
Crockett, I'm Rains and you're a Champ. I'm always bugging you. He'll have his door closed. I'll be like, hey.
I just need some quiet time, please.
You want to read this book with me? I have nobody to read a book with.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
If I'm not sure if y'all are out of questions, but the book that I wrote before this one, Bound for the Promised Land, is the single thing I'm proudest of in my life.
Oh, okay.
It won the Spur Award for Best Western Novel the year it came out. And it's another sweeping historical epic. It follows the life of this black man in the 19th century born into slavery, from his childhood to running away and joining the Union Army, to then coming back home to Reconstruction, moving up north and experiencing race riots and rejoining the Army and spending 20 years as a Buffalo Soldier, with kind of the climax being the charge up San Juan Hill. But the whole thing, there's a lot of action. It is his spiritual journey. He's looking for the meaning of freedom. What does it even mean? Because everywhere he turns, people say he has it and he doesn't. And it's just this odyssey. And I love the book. I'm very proud of it. But I also consider that book and this one to be almost like bookends. They are the opposites. Because I've got this white Confederate guerrilla who is being basically dragged into damnation. And then you've got this black Union soldier in a tale of redemption, in which he learns to get over being angry. And so the two of them, I feel, go together really, really well.
I like that.
Maybe we can all get together after we read that. That would be fun.
That idea
if you'd be
too.
willing to do that, that would be a lot of fun.
I would love to talk
that'd be a
about
lot
that
of fun.
book.
How many books have you written?
I always fear that question because I don't know. I've written 9 novels.
Okay.
I've co-written about 20, and I have several collections worth of short stories in different genres. So, I don't know. I guess a fair answer might be 20.
Okay. That's really impressive. Yeah.
Well, I decided to go back to school to find a different way to support my nasty writing habit other than the manual labor I had been doing. And in a way it worked. My day job is writing also, but it takes up all my time. I have not been as productive in my artistic fictional writing as I want to be because of teaching. Like the last 2 summers, I've been wanting to really jump into this novel I'm working on, and both times I had to do rewrites and rewrites and rewrites of nonfiction stuff. But I still regard it as I regard my authorial voice, even though I slip into different characters, as my true voice. That if someone says they know me and they haven't read one of my novels, they don't really know me, right? Because I reveal tiny bits of myself there. This particular book, well, not sure if we should go into this or not. Bound for the Promised Land came out. So it was a story about escaping slavery when I was leaving a particular religious denomination. And then this book was the fallout of that, when I was experiencing the fallout and feeling persecuted as a result of that. And then the one I wrote after this, Crossroad Blues, which I'm also very proud of. It's a crime novel set in 1950s Nashville with an all-black cast. It's set at a blues joint. Musicians not good enough to go to Memphis, basically. That's what it is. But that was, I wrote that while I was going through a really difficult divorce, and a lot of that shows through. So I'm not the kind of person that journals or writes, well, people keep saying I should write a memoir, but I got to wait for the right people to die. But I let little bits out of myself, and I think that that's why the books where I'm doing that are the ones that resonate with readers more, because there is that feeling of verisimilitude, right? Of authenticity, that there's little bits of reality in there that I think I'm experiencing, but other people experience, so you can make that connection. Some of my books that I've written where I just outline, here's what I want to happen, and there was not that deep emotional engagement, and I didn't write first person, to me, seemed kind of flat.
That was a question I was going to ask. I guess you kind of answered it, and I didn't get to ask Dr. Witcher this too, because he's written a few books, but his are all nonfiction, kind of journalistic. But I didn't know if you journaled or not, because I've read a lot of authors recommend that's the first place to start to find your voice is to journal. But I guess if you're putting them into your characters, though, you don't. I guess maybe you don't need to do that.
You would have to know me really, really well to look at my body of work and say, okay, this is that time period, or this is that family relationship. But I am a very private person. And so that is a way for me to let that out, I guess, in a way that feels safe to me.
Yeah, that's really cool.
I dedicated this to my little brother, Tony, who passed away 5 years ago. 5 years ago last month. He was in and out of prison a lot. Loved him deeply and dearly, but he never read my book until he was in prison and had nothing else to do. But I've got lots of great stories about him. He, in a lot of ways, he and a couple of my cousins are also kind of like Champ Ferguson. One cousin, I won't mention which one, but I took one of my friends to visit them along with my brother and had a nice time. And then later, my friend called, I'm going to go up to what's-his-name's house. And I'm like, are you insane? You can't go there in the middle of the night without me. Do you have any idea what would happen?
Did you place any of your brother in any of the characters in the book?
Not specifically, but there was a lot of one of my uncles.
Okay. Yeah.
He was a rough fellow.
Okay. Yeah. You talked about the diction, but I didn't notice the word yurt in there.
Well, yurt had not worked itself into the vocabulary. There's no recorded instance of it that early.
Crockett, do you have any more?
Oh, I got a yurt story.
Okay, yeah, always for a yurt story.
Went to the University of Illinois and had this NSF grant where I was working at the laboratory high school, the University High School, and we would take students on a field trip to Clarksdale, Mississippi on spring break, just to give them an opportunity of what service is, right, and how everyone's not as privileged as they are. But we're on one of these trips, and the kids were talking about their slang, and I said, hey, where I'm from in Sparta, we have our own word, yurt. Even people in other counties don't know it. And the track coach was from Knoxville originally. He said, wait a minute, that's what that is? Somebody spray painted that on the side of our gym, and we couldn't figure out what the heck it was. I'm like, well, the Warriors came and played in your gym, and this is their legacy.
That's hilarious. The last 2 trips that I've taken to Europe, our tour guides always try to address our group by saying y'all, because they figure we'll respond to y'all. And you still have this group of people from Sparta who didn't hear them. And each tour guide, I have to tell them, say yurt. If you yell yurt really loud, they will hear that.
Yes.
Who is this?
That's one of the guards.
Right. Do we know who or anything?
I don't know that we even know specifically. This is actually taken from a larger picture. There's like 8 guards.
Okay,
around it. You may have seen that one.
When I first saw this, I was thinking, oh, maybe that's his brother Jim. And then I thought, oh, maybe that's Bledsoe.
Or maybe it's Rains.
Okay.
I thought it might have been Rains.
But no, it's one of the guards.
Great. I lied. I do have one last question.
No,
and it's okay if you don't have an answer to this or even needed to think. But you teach Tennessee history. You write Tennesseans. What do you think we should be most proud of about Tennessee?
That's a good question.
That is an excellent question.
We probably have a lot to be angry about.
Oh, yeah.
But I think we have a lot of things that we are proud about. Mm-hmm. What should we, our students, everybody be most proud about?
I think that in Tennessee, we have a unique blend of culture, history, and music, particularly music. Different forms of music. People think of country music, but Piedmont blues, blues out in Memphis, various other things. I think that's something to be very proud of. That creativity in the midst of turmoil, because a lot of that comes together. Whether you're talking about Appalachian poverty or you're talking about like rural West Tennessee poverty. It comes out in the music and in the songs. And I remember I grew up really poor. I'm the first male in the history of my whole family to graduate high school. One of my female cousins beat me to it. But really, really poor, and everybody was laughing all the time, making fun of our poverty. We'd get mad if someone else did. But we were making fun of the experiences that we were having in a creative way that sort of turned that around and took it from being oppression to being something positive. So I think that's something to be proud of. I think that's across from east to west in Tennessee.
That's my experience too. Yep.
Yeah. Do you have any advice to your fellow White County Warriors who may be thinking about, I think I might want to write or anything like that? Do you have any advice for them on maybe where to get started or how to get started? Or we begin by beginning, right, Crockett? That's what Guy Montag says, yeah.
For about 8 years, I taught a writer's workshop at the public library here in Putnam County. I stopped when COVID came, and then post-COVID, I've been so busy. But I've spent a lot of time talking with people about this, and every chance I get to talk with students about writing, I take it, because I get to talk about history all the time. So my advice is find your voice, find your story. Don't think about what's popular. Don't think about what's going to make money, because that's pretty pointless. But write to express yourself And the single most important thing is to have tenacity, to keep at it. I mean, we have no idea how many great writers were undiscovered because they gave up right before the opportunity came to them from around the corner, you know. So, and there are some writers who've been successful who are pretty crappy, actually, but they were in the right place at the right time because they hung with it, you know.
Yeah.
So that's an important thing. Don't get despondent, but at the same time, you avoid despondency by not having unrealistic goals of being rich and famous.
Yeah.
That can't be why you write.
Yeah.
It can be a byproduct if you're lucky, but you write because you're a writer. It's like breathing. Once you started doing it, it's kind of hard to stop.
Yeah.
Because it becomes part of who you are. So keep doing it.
Yeah, that's what I've told Crockett. He and I have talked about story ideas that we've had, and that's what I told him. I said, I'm bringing something to you after the summer because why not? We write for fun, you know.
That's how I got started.
Yeah.
You know, I was just writing to entertain myself.
Right, yeah. Do you want to talk about your latest book?
Well, my most recent book was a nonfiction history book about the history of race in comics called Shaolin Brew. Looking at basically the interactions of African American and Asian American cultures, 1970s blaxploitation, kung fu. That's the crux of it. And my work in progress, that's been in progress way too long because it demands on my time, that I hope to at least come close to finishing this summer, is another sweeping historical epic about the history of the Cherokee Nation.
Oh, okay.
It starts, I'm about a third of the way through the first draft. It starts around 1907, Oklahoma statehood, and the narrator, it's first person, is in his 70s. He was on the Trail of Tears when he was 8 or 9 years old, and then he grew up. He was part of the Civil War, part of various movements. And so his life story is also the life story of the Cherokee Nation in Oklahoma because it was dissolved by the government. 1907. So that's what I'm working on.
What is the Upper Cumberland Institute?
Oh, you know, I found out I was in charge of that. That was my first question. Actually, it was established back in the 1980s by Homer Kemp. And then Calvin Dickinson worked closely with it. Dr. Birdwell, when he was a grad student, was working a lot in it. He became the director of it. A few years ago, he asked me if I would be the assistant director of the Upper Cumberland Institute. And I'm like, sure, what is it? And he didn't tell me. And then he passed away, and then I was in charge of it. And so it was designed initially to be a place, or not even a place, an entity centered on preserving the history of the Upper Cumberland in various ways. One of the first things they did was, back in the 80s, they interviewed every living miner from the Wilder coal mine strikes they could find, which was later made into a documentary by WCTE.
Cool. Okay.
Then they did a lot of other interviews. They did an architectural study of all the older buildings in the 1990s that resulted in a book. Since I've taken over, I've tried to make it sort of a virtual digital thing. We got a bunch of things going on. I've gotten several grants that I've been able to pay students to participate in these projects. There's an oral history project that you can access through the Tennessee Tech Archives, the interviews we've already done. Interviewing, first there was a weather study that we did, a climate study, but we have to say weather because people shut down. But about changes in weather over the lifetime of people who were, lived here at least 20 or 30 years. Yeah. And then we also have an oral history project about shirt factories and tobacco agriculture, two things that used to be central to this region that are pretty much gone from here now. And so we're trying to interview people who were a part of that so as to have that record. We've also been interviewing combat veterans, older combat veterans, to get their stories. Right now, we've had this project going on. your listeners can't see this, but our rural crime database.
Oh, cool.
Started with the death penalty project. Students working on this in my digital history class. We got a grant to get started laying the groundwork for this. We're trying to collate crime statistics along with socioeconomic factors like unemployment rates, poverty rates, and even looking at weather over certain time periods from all 14 of the Tennessee Upper Cumberland counties, going back to 2000 because it's a little spotty before that, with kind of a dream goal being to do that for all of Appalachia. I actually had a grant proposal that was taken all the way up to D.C. and looked like it might get funded for like a multi-million-dollar thing, but then it was dependent upon this year's budget. And we have no budget, so it never happened. But yeah, so stuff like that. That's engaged, just like in the old days with those earlier projects, engaging students, getting them involved, helping them to get relevant experience in oral history, archival stuff, and now digital history.
That's really cool. The shirt factories, that's, oh man, so many of my grandparents and their friends, that's all I hear. I used to work at the shirt factory in Sparta.
Sometimes when we've got more time, I'll have to tell you about the 1947 Sparta shirt factory strike. It was dramatic.
That sounds like another novel.
It could be.
There we go.
It might actually be a nonfiction work.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Because it gets tied in to national things that you would not expect.
Oh, that'd be really cool. Do you have anything else you want to plug, or?
I think that's probably it for now. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. I'm going to ask you this, and you don't have to, but I'm hoping that you will. We close every show by saying thank you as one of the characters in the book. And you can pick who you want to be. And I told Crockett I'll pick Rains Philpott.
Okay. So.
No, sir, I'm rating on you.
Okay, so I'm a character.
You pick whoever you want.
Whoever you want in the book.
I was going to pick Champ, but I realized I might have to be selective in my salty language. Okay, so one time I was at a book signing. In Sparta, and several older ladies come in to get my picture. For I think it was a Daughters of Confederate Veterans thing. And the lady who was asking me, she was going to take my picture. And she said, "You wrote this book, didn't you?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "I've heard this book is filthy." I'm like, "What? Have you read it?" "No. My brother said it's got all these dirty words in it." And I said, "Well, I kind of thought that if Champ Ferguson's the kind of guy that would cut your throat in your sick bed, he might call you a bad name while he was doing it." So I got my picture with him, but she wouldn't buy my book. And then my other book that I mentioned, Crossroad Blues, it's musicians. Okay, blues musicians, and I tried to be as true to life as possible. My aunt threw that book at me when I saw her. "I didn't think you even knowed such words." Well, I do. All right. Well,
you can say whatever you want to, because I can always put an explicit tag on it. So.
Well, I reckon I already tell you how much I appreciate you spending your time here with me today. Listen to me spin my tales. I hope that you go out there and have yourselves a good day. And if anybody gives you any problems, you just let me know.
That was good.
That's down and out the best one we've ever had.
Yeah, mine's going to sound awful now. Okay. I'm Rains Philpott. And it's good that I'm going after Champ. I just want to say thank you. If it's okay with you, Champ, it's okay. Champ said it's okay, so thank you. Wait, this is Tinker Dave, right?
I'm going to be Tinker Dave, baby. So, if I ever find him again, I'll be sure and tell him, "Thank you" with my gun.
That was awesome. That was awesome.
But I tell you what, I won't miss this time.
Well, I want to say again, thank you to Dr. Troy Smith, and just give a big thanks and shout out to just all the people at Tennessee Tech University in Cookeville. They've been so helpful, and they've always been so eager to help us out. I want to thank, again, Dr. Troy Smith for his interview over his book. Hopefully we'll be able to talk to him about more of his books in the future. Also want to thank Dr. Russ Witcher for talking to us about Going Home to Die No More, the book that he wrote. We had a conversation with him, and that was published about a month ago at this time. So just want to thank him, and also want to thank Dr. Brenda Wilson for giving us the leads and being so supportive, as the Wilson family has always been for me. I really appreciate them. Thank you again to them. I want to thank April Crockett, because she hooks us up with study rooms, and we get to go in there this summer and podcast and get caught up on our big summer read, and just really a big thanks to her for doing that for us. I just wanted to make sure to thank the people at Tennessee Tech. That's why universities are important to our communities, our small town communities, our big communities such as Nashville, Knoxville, Atlanta. Without universities, there's a lot of research that would be lost. There's a lot of jobs that would be lost. Universities have helped create jobs. They help people find jobs. They help people find the job that they want or the job that they hope for. They help people like me who do podcasts, and they help people to be creative. They help enrich our communities. They help research and develop, and they help to find answers for our communities. I mean, you look at the work that Dr. Smith was talking about with the Upper Cumberland Institute at Tech, the things that they do there to help find answers to some of the questions that we have in this area. Without universities, these things would disappear. I can't think about the impact that our community here in the Upper Cumberland would have if Tennessee Tech was not able to do the things that it does. So universities matter, education matters, and this is just another example of that. So a big thanks to the people at Tennessee Tech University. They've always been really helpful, and I'm really thankful for them. I just wanted to also take some time to give you a heads up of what we've got coming down the pipe here. If you wanted to kind of read along with us in the coming weeks, we're going to look next week at a book called A Murder in St. Augustine. My wife and I, as you know, visit the city of St. Augustine for vacation every year. We take our family down there, and we love it. Then there's a true crime book called Murder in St. Augustine, The Mysterious Death of Athalia Ponsell Lindsley. We're going to talk about that. We're going to do a small field trip in St. Augustine and have an episode over that. We're going to talk about Percival Everett's James. It's just won a Pulitzer Prize, so we're going to talk about that book. And also there will be an episode about The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, which that is a companion piece to. Coming on down the way, we've got A Night to Remember, the Titanic retelling, In Cold Blood with Truman Capote. We've got the book Yellowface, Silence, Miracle Creek, The Hobbit, From Russia with Love. We got a lot coming down the way. So if you want to grab one of those and read, like I said, I don't know the exact order because sometimes I have it planned, and then sometimes we get to talking about a book and get really excited about it and we want a podcast, or we've got an interview or two lined up, and hopefully we can get those in there as well. But if you want to read along with us, please pick up one of those books. And if you're following along with our Big Summer Read, thank you. And if you're not, you still have time. There will be some more Big Summer Read check-ins along the way the rest of this summer. Thanks, everybody, for listening. I really do appreciate it. And just thanks for the support. All right. See you next time.
Hey, if you're a fan of good conversations and fresh takes on literature and the kind of school stories that stick with you long after the bell rings, well, I've got a podcast for you. It's called With Honors, and it's where my high school students have taken the microphone, not just to analyze books or talk about our lessons, but to reflect on what we've learned this year, have conversations about what surprised them, how our literature and classroom experiences connect to their real lives. And we talk about everything from symbolism and Poe to the pros and cons of class pets, and all through the voices of smart, curious students who have learned to speak their minds. New episodes drop regularly every week, and everyone is a snapshot of what it looks like when students take ownership of their own learning and have a little fun while they're at it. You can find With Honors on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and our YouTube channel, so check them out.